Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in once again to Queen Amadai TV presents The Root of All Evil. So as you're coming in, please feel free to go ahead and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Be sure to click the notification bell and click the word all so that you're notified each time the Queen Goddess goes live. Okay, so I'm going to give everyone a few minutes to come in, on in, and then we're going to get started. This is clearly a nefarious story, okay? Clearly nefarious, people. All right. Brandon, Cherokee Descended King, Terry, Emperor Rex, Beatzilla, CH464, Melanie Warren. Okay. So this is a story about some teens that decided they wanted to go out and rob somebody because they wanted to make about $10,000 a piece so they could go traveling around the world. Now, foolishly, they actually thought $10,000 was going to help them travel around the world. Okay. And they went out and decided they were going to kill people. So let's talk about it, because this actually happened 20 years ago, right? This January was 20 years ago that this happened. So 20 years ago, tragedy struck the Dartmouth community. The violent actions of two local teenagers left many people in Dartmouth grieving their losses and fearing for their own safety. Now, since the founding of Dartmouth, the relationship between the college and the Upper Valley has also been one of give and take. And while these events could have been a permanent divide between the two, the local community bonded together, securing justice for the two beloved professors who were killed. So let's talk about what happened to these two professors. On January the 27th of 2001, 20 years ago, two teenagers drove from the town of Chelsea, Vermont to Etna, New Hampshire, that is. Now, their names were James Parker and Robert Tulloch. After buying SOG knives, the same type used by special forces in Vietnam during the war, mind you, they proceeded to go to the house of Susanne Zantop. All right. Now, this woman was a professor, as well was her husband. So they go to these people's home. The Zantops, they had been married since 1970. And they had two children, and they had immigrated from Germany and met while studying at Stanford University. Half was there for his PhD in geology. That was his name, Half, like the word H-A-L-V. I mean, like a half of something. His name was literally Half. Now, Half for his PhD, or he had his PhD in geology. And Suzanne, she had a master's in political science. They had been teaching at Dartmouth since the mid-70s, with Half being a popular professor of geology and earth science. And Suzanne, she was the chair of the German departments. Now, Parker and Tulloch, the two killers, nefarious nonetheless, and these were teenagers, people. They were teenagers. Now, Parker and Tulloch selected the Zantop's house at random, not knowing the couple before knocking on the door. They didn't know who lived there. They just saw it was a nice house in a nice neighborhood and figured these people must have some cash. Now, posing as students doing a research study on earth science, they approached the Zantop's house intending to gain access to Half's bank accounts. They were looking for at least $10,000, which they would use to flee to Australia. As Suzanne was preparing her dinner, Half, her husband, he allowed the two inside. Parker and Tulloch started to ask Half questions. And when the two did not seem to be fully prepared, Half told them as much, or he told them as much, saying that, you really don't seem like you know what you're talking about. I mean, you just seem ill prepared. Well, the reason they weren't prepared because they were devils, just out to kill and rob. Beatzilla says evil starts early. Absolutely. So when he told them that they were, just not prepared, they got angry. Tulloch got so mad. And then Half, he just turned to walk away. But then Tulloch attacked him with his knife, fatally slashing him across the chest and face. Now, when Suzanne entered from the kitchen, she met the same tragic fate. After killing the Zantops, Parker and Tulloch stole 300. Now, I want y'all to pay attention. They literally killed these two people who are pillars of their community, mind you. They killed these two people for a net worth of $340. All the money that the man had in his wallet. And then they fled, covered in blood, no less. Now, the two bodies left at the scene were not even discovered until later that evening when a dinner guest arrived to find the tragic scene. Police originally had no leads or witnesses, but eventually found a footprint and 2 knife sheaths. The sheets were traced back to Parker, who told police that he had bought them with Tulloch to build a fort, but later had sold them, he said. Police left and went to question Tulloch at his home, telling the teen that he was not required to speak to them. Tulloch cooperated, however, telling the same story as Parker and offering up his fingerprints and boots for matching purposes. Now, the next morning, Tulloch and Parker fled their homes, leading their parents to call the police, in spite of a note that Parker left behind that read, "Don't call the cops." You just killed 2 people and you're going to really leave a note after you flee? Don't call the cops. Honey, that's exactly what they should have done. Okay, please. Nefarious. Now, the 2 drove to Massachusetts in Parker's car before ditching it and then attempting to hitchhike to California. At the same time, police put out a warrant for the arrest of Tulloch and sought Parker for questioning. Now, the pair made it to New Jersey, where a truck driver headed to Indiana gave them a lift west, broadcasting their location over his radio to alert authorities. A police officer responded, pretending to be another trucker and offering them a ride. Let me tell y'all something. If this truck driver picked these devils up and gave them a ride and then called the police to let them know of their location, he clearly knew they were killers. Now, he had to be brave, honey, because there's no way I would have picked them up. Okay? Police. So the police officer responded, pretending to be another truck driver and offering them a ride west from Indiana. When the pair disembarked at a truck stop, they were arrested and taken right back to New Hampshire. Now, Tulloch and Parker were indicted and tried as adults. Even though Parker was only 16, mind you, he was still technically a minor. On several charges, including the murder of the Zantops, Parker agreed to testify as a witness against Tulloch in exchange for a lesser sentence. Now, Tulloch attempted unsuccessfully to be certified as mentally ill. He tried to play that mental illness card, honey. Yes, he sure did. He tried unsuccessfully in order to evade charges. See, you're not going to get away with the mental illness card when you kill white folk. That's what you're not going to do. Okay? Both wound up pleading guilty. Now, Parker, he pled to second degree murder, and he was a 16-year-old. Tulloch was 17. He pled guilty to first degree murder. Now, while Parker broke down in tears during his trial, Tulloch was emotionless and refused to look at the Zantop's daughter, Veronica, as she read a victim impact statement aloud. Veronica Zantop said that her father's name, translated from German, meant help, and that his generosity and openness is what made the crime possible, making their deaths seem like the greatest violation. Because they were clearly just trying to be nice, or he was. James Parker was sentenced to 25 years to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 16 years. Please. Robert Tulloch was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Both have had their sentences reviewed in recent years. I want y'all to pay attention, honey. In recent years, they both had their sentences reviewed. In 2019, Parker asked for an early release from prison. His lawyer noted that while in prison, Parker had obtained a master's degree and been a model prisoner. Well, isn't that nice? Still a killer nonetheless. Now, the move was divisive in the Dartmouth community, with Professor Alex Jeter of the English department, a close friend of the Zantops, saying that she was fearful of Parker being released, as she should be. Jeter cast doubt on his rehabilitation in prison and noted that Parker had access to a high-powered attorney that enabled him to receive a lighter sentence at the trial even. Now, conversely, Phil Pochada, a friend of the Zantops, stated that lifting Parker's sentence would send a message to other inmates that rehabilitation while serving time would be rewarded. Parker later withdrew his appeal and will remain in prison at least until 2024, which isn't far from now. Meanwhile, Tulloch's case came under review after the Supreme Court case of Miller versus Alabama, in which the Supreme Court ruled that mandatory sentencing to life without parole was unconstitutional for minors, even if they were cold-blooded killers. The New Hampshire Supreme Court ruled in 2014 that Tulloch's case would be reviewed for sentencing. However, as of now, Well, no hearing date has been set, and hopefully it won't be. Please, he needs to stay where he is. Now, as of now, both Tulloch and Parker are held in the New Hampshire State Prison for Men, where it is reported that they have minimal contact. Let me tell y'all something. I'm going to tell y'all something. What they don't mention in this article is that when they killed those people, they didn't stop there. They were planning to kill more. So they went to cabins, right? And they found a man staying at the cabin. He had his 11-year-old son that he was keeping for the weekend. They went and knocked on the door. The man came to the door. Now, he was first already suspicious because they came late at night. It was around 9 o'clock at night. That may not be late to some people, but that's late for somebody to be knocking on your door unexpected, right? So he went to the door, and they come to the door, and one of them says, our car broke down. Could you please let us inside so we can use the phone? So when they first knocked on the door, you know what the man did? Because he knew something wasn't right, or he didn't think something was right. Because who would be knocking on his cabin door at that time of night, he thought? Plus, he knew his son was there. He wanted to make sure he protected him. So he wasn't going to do anything foolish like just open his door to strangers. So he got his gun, and he put it in his hip, right? And when he went to the door and they asked if they could come in and use the phone, he opened his vest and showed them that he had a gun. Oh, you know what they did? They fled. Because he had a gun. They only had a knife. And guess what he found out the next day, though? The next day, when the man went outside, there were 2 graves dug behind the cabin. So they'd obviously been watching him and his son and knew they were in there and had planned on killing them as soon as they made entrance. So I'm sorry. The fact that these 2 even had their cases be reviewed is insidiously obtuse as far as I'm concerned. Okay? Now, looking back with 20 years of hindsight, these events strike anyone as bizarre. How could this happen? Did this really happen here? Is what people of Dartmouth ask themselves to this day. Many current Dartmouth students were either not born yet or were only a toddler, meaning that they simply do not know and cannot understand the full scope of these events. 20 years later, the story still strikes a chord. And with the popularity of the true crime podcasts and TV shows like this podcast, right? Okay, the story is still told. One could even say that these events now fit into a certain part of our storytelling consciousness. However, slipping the case of the Dartmouth murders into a fictionalized story or simply a compelling and suspenseful tale is not doing justice to these events. The Zantops were real people. Tulloch and Parker are still paying for their crimes, as they should. These are not fictional characters on paper, but real living, breathing people. And as we remember these events 20 years later, there is still a special message in all of this. It is that in this hard time of C-19, or stupid 19, we can look at these memories as a guiding example. When times were hard, the Dartmouth community did not fracture or divide like they easily could have done, but instead they bonded together and overcame this tragic event. The unity and perseverance of the community 20 years ago should be a lesson to all of us now, they say. This is what they're saying, not me. As much as we might disagree or are divided on what will happen next, everyone still shares these haunting memories and the unity that overcame them. Clearly, they were nefarious people, okay? Make no mistake. Don't care for cabins, too isolated and creepy. Exactly. They absolutely are, beloveds. Although I do like to go to a good cabin every now and again. Okay? Saturday said unconstitutional. How and where? Exactly. I'm so sorry. Well, isn't that special in my Dana Carvey voice? Oh, I used to love that, Brother Sly. So, oh my goodness. Bezil says straight up demons. Yes, that's absolutely what they were. But don't worry. There's another demon that we're going to talk about in the next few minutes, people. In 5 minutes, I'll be going live on Queen Amadai TV Presents True Crimes. And honey, I'm going to tell you like this. You don't want to miss this story just between me and you. It's about a killer, a serial killer, who started murdering at the age of 13. I'm so serious. 13 years old. Who's thinking about serial killing? So let's talk about it. His name is Craig Price. He's still in prison to this day, as he should be. Okay? And the heinousness of his crimes is unmatched. So I hope you all join me in the next chat. Melanie Brown said, got demon seeds? Honey, somebody does. All right, clearly. So with that all being said, okay, Desmond. CH464 says, Queen, I actually like the cabins. I've actually been to a log cabin in the Shenandoah Valley in Virginia a few years ago. It was nice, but the times that we're in now, I would never do that. Absolutely, beloved. I love cabins too, honey. I've been to cabins. But I don't want to be out in the woods by myself. You see, there's other cabins around the ones I go to in close proximity, not too far away. At least if you scream, someone can hear you. So please, honey, being out in a cabin by yourself where no one's in earshot of you, that's not for me. All right, so I hope to see you all in the next chat, starting in 5 minutes. True crime, okay? Going to be on Queen Amadai TV presents True Crimes. Talk to you soon, people. All right? Okay, beloveds. Peace.